And here we go. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining from all over the world. Welcome to another session of WeWork Labs Leadership Academy. For those of you who are new to us, WeWork Labs Leadership Academy is a 3-month personal growth bootcamp aimed at transforming our WeWork members into more impactful leaders. And today we will talk about the topic of storytelling. And I'm thrilled to welcome Susan Lindner. I've worked with Susan in the past, and her workshop was always among the most popular ones in the accelerator program that I used to run in my previous life. So I'm very excited that she accepted my invite to come teach our WeWork Labs Leadership Academy community today. A little bit of background on Susan. She's a cultural anthropologist, brand marketer, and a disruptor. She got her start as an AIDS educator in the brothels of Thailand, helping turn prostitutes into entrepreneurs. Today, she's the founder of Emerging Media, a branding, PR, and marketing agency dedicated to helping tech founders reach their finish lines. Her award-winning strategies have gotten 10 companies acquired, and she's now hell-bent on sharing those strategies with the world. Susan speaks to startups, innovators, and top executives from more than 60 countries at GE, PwC, Deutsche Bank, Capital One, and at global conferences, consulates, and trade organizations about strategic storytelling, mastering the message, and media for maximum impact. And without further ado, Susan, the Zoom stage is yours.
The Zoom stage is mine. Direct from my living room is perfect. Welcome everyone in pandemic world, and hopefully filled with lots of good health as well. I'm excited to be here, Stephanie. Thank you so much for inviting me. So I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get started. And guys, if you want to, we're going to reserve questions for the end, but if you want to ask a question, by all means, put it in chat. Stephanie, I think you're going to be moderating our chat for us. And we're also, toward the end of the conversation, we're going to be doing a little bit of a workshop so that you have tools in your hand directly when you leave this conversation, and you can put them to work immediately. I want to thank my next door neighbor for posing for this and for getting this tattoo that I so desperately need for my marketing. So thank you, Greg. We're going to dive right in. So what Stephanie told you is that I'm an anthropologist by training. And so I don't know if just put in the chat Y or N. I would love to see how many of you are familiar with the brilliant Polish anthropologist Bronislaw Malinowski. I'm sure he comes across, and you can put a yes for you know him, N for no if you don't. Bronislaw Malinowski was one of my primary heroes when I was first studying anthropology in undergrad. Bronislaw Malinowski is a guy who had PhDs in chemistry and economics and onto anthropology, would go on to create a field completely within anthropology that would wind up influencing every other social science in the world. But Bronislaw is most famous for one thing, and that is getting lost in Papua New Guinea. He was detained, he was on his way to Australia, and instead wound up getting detoured to Papua New Guinea. And while he was in Papua New Guinea, he learned one critical fact, and that was, in order to understand a culture, you had to live with that culture, participate in the rituals of that culture to truly understand how a culture functions. And as a result of that, I mean, compared to what his colleagues were doing at the time, they were reading texts, historical texts, and making cultural commentary on what those societies were like at the time without ever actually visiting those societies. So Bronislaw in 1914 winds up going to Papua New Guinea and staying there. And he says we have to live with, work with, sleep with, participate in rituals. We have to get angry, we have to make up, and we have to understand one another in order to truly understand a culture. Now that understanding translates into, in our offices today, the open door policy. It translates into the 360-degree review of one another. It translates into change management for today and how we understand how cultures change. And that is called applied anthropology. It's where we truly understand what's going on around us in order to create the stories that create the basis of our lives. So those stories that we tell one another are the backbone of creating culture, and it's actually what drives change in humankind. So that storytelling ability is what Branislaw told all of us, and how it makes it possible for us to look at change, and in this case, innovation, and using stories to make the difference. So a little bit of background on me. I wasn't always an innovation storyteller. I first got, well, I would say my last job before getting into owning my own agency was working at the Centers for Disease Control during a different pandemic. It was HIV. And I was looking, I worked in some of the toughest neighborhoods in New York looking at variant and resistant strains of the HIV virus. And prior to that, in my early 20s, I was a radical communist. Yep, I hitchhiked from my university town in Costa Rica through Nicaragua and El Salvador, 5 different countries, hitchhiking with 50 drivers, and never had a problem, surprisingly. But my desire, once I got to those front lines, was to really begin to look at revolution in a different way. It's very romantic to watch a war going on CNN. It's very different when you get there. It changed the way that I looked at solving problems. And I decided that I wanted to use my efforts as a young person to really help change the direction of a serious pandemic going on at the time. I left Central America and went on to work in Thailand for a large nonprofit organization where I worked with Thai and indigenous populations around fighting HIV. And I spent most of my time in brothels working with prostitutes and their customers, trying to convince them that condoms were the way to change the trajectory of their lives. So when I first got to Thailand in 1994, these were the common messages that you would see on the highway. This was a giant billboard funded by Norwegian Church Aid that essentially said, "Get AIDS and die." Now, by the time I got to the village where I was working, the first red light district had already gone out of business, as most of the prostitutes and their customers had passed away from HIV. But due to the impact of supply and demand, another red light district popped up right next door. And soon the sex trade was alive and well. Unfortunately, it was one of the biggest disease vectors for spreading HIV. And so we needed to find a way to stop it. So this was the answer of the Department of Public Health. There is a great fear among hungry ghosts like this one, who will steal your soul. And effectively, fear was incredibly helpful in initially slowing the spread of HIV. There were terrifying posters like this in public health centers and on the roads, and it worked for a while until it didn't. So it worked for about 6 months, and then people found that they weren't getting HIV anymore. Well, they went back to their old habits of not using condoms or not using clean needles. And so we did what any good marketer would do. We doubled down, and the Ministry of Public Health created even more terrifying posters of symptoms and people getting sick and dying. And that was effective for a while too, until it wasn't anymore. So we realized if the only tool we had at our disposal to fight HIV, we had no drugs or remedies at the time, was the condom. The only thing we could change about it was the story. So I'd like to ask a question of the group now. Just put a guess in here for me in the chat. How old do you think the condom is? If you could put a date on the condom, when it was addressed, when it was originally invented, how old do you think the condom is? How many years old? 200 years old? 1920? Okay, it's 100 years old. Egyptian times, very good guess. Animal intestines, right? 200 years old. The original first evidence of the condom is found in the caves of France in the Grotte Carambelle, 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago. We have no idea if this was a public health message or somebody was bragging about last night, but condoms have been with us for a very long time. So you know the title of this presentation is Innovation Storytelling. So needless to say, the innovation that we had to work with was ancient. So the only thing we could really change about that was the story associated with it, because condoms have been with us for a very, very long time. So we had to think about what was the story that we would craft. And it's challenging to create a good story. These were my core audiences at the time. So we had first the mamasans, right? These are the women who owned the brothels, predominantly women. We had the customers themselves, and we had the sex workers. He or she was on the front lines, if you will, fighting the battle against HIV. And the average sex worker that I was working with saw about 8 customers a night. 8 customers a night. So we needed to figure out what was a story that would appeal to each of them. So if you think about it for a moment, what is in it for the brothel owner? What did they really want to get out of this relationship? I mean, feel free to put your answers in the chat. But, I found that most of the brothel owners were in it for the money, right? They were here to make a profit on these women who would typically come and work for them for about 2 years and then go back home. And for the customer, what was in it for them was largely the pleasure, one night out, right? Typically you go out with a bunch of friends, and then rather than going to see a band, you might go to a brothel in the evening. And then finally, the sex workers themselves, what was in it for them was sending money back home and supporting their families back home. So their greatest need at the time was survival, because it was really their bodies on the line. So we needed to come up with a different story, and we realized that we had to make each one of these individuals the hero of their own story in order to change their behavior. Now, it's that idea of moving the story from the condom, how it works, what it does, how it protects you, and moving the hero of the story to the center of the story is critical, because it means that that person plays an active role and a participant in the story they tell themselves. And that story has to become internalized in order for behavior to change. Now, if you think about this in the context of your own businesses, what is the story you wish your customers were telling themselves about their own needs, their own products or services, that would get them to change their behavior from a competitor or to doing nothing to what you need them to do? So we had to make each one of these customers the hero of their own story. So we said to the brothel owner, what if you could save lives with your brothel rather than being the epicenter of the epidemic? To the customer, we said, what if you could go home each night knowing that you were protecting your wife, your girlfriend, your children from the next line of infection? And finally, to the prostitute herself, we said, what if you could own your own destiny? And rather than thinking of survival, you actually thought of a future. And so with each of them, we came up with communication strategies that would support those opportunities to make each of them the hero. So I want to just pause for a minute and ask you, how are you making your customer the hero of the story rather than your product or service, your innovation, being the hero of the story? For the sex worker herself, we decided to begin to implement programs that would turn a sex worker into an entrepreneur. And so this girl from New York was teaching chicken raising, duck raising, pig raising, secretarial skills, computer skills, in order to show women a way out of this line of work if they didn't want to do it anymore. And we actually wound up dropping HIV infection rates dramatically in the province that I worked in, right on the border with Burma, where all of the conflict is going on now. So we created stories and a pathway that would allow each listener to become a hero of that story. So I want to talk with you a little bit about the greatest viral marketers of all time. In addition to being an anthropology major in college, I was also a religion major, and I was fascinated by how the prophets were able to get the word to move around the world just with maybe 12 close friends, or just a small community of monks in the middle of a forest, or on a roving caravan of nomads throughout the desert. right? These incredible viral storytellers. And what do I mean by that? Viral storytellers are people who get other people to tell their story for them. So when something goes viral, effectively what someone is doing is getting other people to spread the word. And as a marketer, that is exactly the kind of lift that you're looking for. So I looked at and I analyzed the greatest prophets and thought, how did they get this story, this innovation, a shift in thinking, right? The product or service is just an idea of these individuals, and maybe eternal salvation, sure, or maybe a greater rebirth, terrific. But how did they get the word to spread? And so I want to show you the 5 eternal rules of storytelling to talk about exactly how they got this done. So these rules are ones that you can apply to your innovation business now. And I want to give you these examples from the prophets themselves. So first off, all of the prophets began with one thing in common, a shared history. A shared history. You'll notice that Jesus didn't throw out Judaism when he talked about the shift that was taking place. He married his ideas with the calendar, holy rituals, and so forth, and brought those concepts along with him. Buddha did exactly the same in shifting from his belief in Hinduism, right? And now bringing on new concepts that would change the world. They tied history, our values, directly from where we all came from in order to move us forward. Now, what does this look like in the world of technology? You may notice that the save icon in Word is a tiny little 3x5 floppy disk. I was cleaning out my own home and when I was selling my house, and I found my senior thesis saved on a floppy disk. And I showed it to my 22-year-old son, who goes to one of the most advanced technical colleges in the country. And I said, look what I found. And he looked at me and said, why did you 3D print a copy of the save icon from Word? And I thought, okay, yeah, that's what I did. I'm 3D printing, I'm 3D printing icons in my spare time. He really had no idea, right? But this is the kind of thing of how we take an old concept and we bring it to a new one, right? In Dropbox, we still save things in folders. We have an inbox because there used to be a physical inbox on our desk. Right? We call it email because we know what that is. We know what mail is. We had an E in front of it rather than saying we have transatlantic electronic correspondence that runs through a cable under the ocean and transmits information into my computer via the internet. It's way easier to say email. This is how we bring people along in the process of emerging technologies and innovation. This is how we bring people from history to present and on into future. So not only that, but the prophets were really great about bringing our shared values and purpose with us together. In fact, oftentimes they were reminding us of why we were here to begin with. Those values and purpose are so important. So can you get those really clear? Because when it's time to bring the message, right? Step number 3, the message is where you begin to create the shift, where we say, we cannot go back to the old way of doing things anymore. It's time to shift into a new way of doing things. We will take what serves us and we will leave the rest behind, and we will never return to that place. So we've done it like we've always done it, stops here with the message. And this looks like going from an eye for an eye to turn the other cheek, right? That's the shift that we see. This is where the message says we can't do it anymore. So what is it about your technology, product, service, innovation that is shifting people, that says we are burning the boats and we are not going back? We will take what serves us and we will move ahead forward. That piece is critical. So once you have that message ready to go and in place, you're now going to look around and figure out who your early adopters are. Who are those early adopters, that gang of 12, that community that's willing to follow you in the forest, those folks that are willing to get on the caravan and go as nomads through the desert, spreading the word of the enlightened prophet? Who are those early adopters? I can tell you they are not always the loudest people in your company. Oftentimes they're the biggest skeptics who have had that hallelujah moment, who have really seen the light about the change that's about to come. in a product or service. In the marketplace, we're only looking for about 13.3% of the market, our innovators and our early adopters who are going to shift things for us. These are the folks who stand outside of the Apple store waiting for 3 days to get their hands on the iPhone. So inside the company, who are those people who will support you, who will have your back, and will begin virally spreading the word? And then lastly, you're going to have to get really clear about the language that you use. So it's not great just to have a message, right? We have to get the language to a place where people can feel it, internalize it, and now spread it. Are you able to share the message in a way that somebody else could repeat the minute they leave that meeting with you, the minute they finish reading that email or memo or however you've communicated it? Are you phrasing it in a way that people can take it with them? Because innovation is about movement and momentum. So let's talk about how to do that. I have these 5 eternal rules of storytelling. If you want me to send them to you after this, please feel free to just text iStory to 66866, and I will get you a copy of that 5 essential steps to innovation storytelling so you can have it. Feel free to just text it to me and I will get it to you right after this meeting. I want to talk to you a little bit about why stories matter as opposed to any other form of communication. It is the way that our grandparents have transmitted information to us in our ears at night. It is the way our moms tuck us in. It is the way that information is communicated. If you've ever tried to get a recipe out of your grandmother, if you've ever tried to talk to your father about how to build something, we tell it in stories. The most effective way of communicating to our human brains is through story, because unfortunately, our brain has not evolved to digest Excel spreadsheets and spit them back out to others easily. Virtually every memory you have beyond what you've just experienced is one that has been collected and filed in your human brain as a story. And there are reasons why that is. So we know, thanks to Stanford, that and research by Stanford Business School, that stories are 22 times more memorable than facts alone. They tested people who had heard a lecture and just been given the statistics around a particular business case, and others who had been given the story that supported those statistics. Within 6 minutes, people leaving that room had forgotten the most critical statistics for those who were not told the story. Others were able to retell that story week after week in class. So it is the way our brains are hardwired to receive information. Now you may say, I work in a company where every executive just wants 3 bullet points from me. They only want just the facts, Jack. And to that I say, fantastic. But within minutes of leaving that meeting, they will not remember it ever again. So if you want to be effective in your meetings, your job is actually finding a way to tell great, concise stories that leave people wanting more. That's how our human brains are designed, not in PowerPoint. So I love this phrase, this saying from Brené Brown. We know how much data matters today, and it matters more and more every day. But what if we start to look at data as stories as just data with a soul? Our job as innovators is to find the soul of the data, not just the numbers themselves. So it's really imperative that we stop for a moment and go, what does it all mean? Because my audience doesn't just want the numbers, they want the insights derived from the numbers. Creating a human story around that is so important. And we're going to talk a little bit how to do that. So the other thing I need you to know is that a goodwill story, a story where you're actually helping another human, lights up the brain, quite literally. We're talking about dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline. When you engage the senses, when you make people excited, when you make people terrified, when you give people a sense of well-being, you attach emotion to data. And emotion is that thing that it's the sticky substance for a story that allows us to internalize it and take it with us. So you have to engage the emotions when you tell a story. And great storytellers are phenomenal at engaging us with emotion. How many of you have ever watched Bambi with a child? If you've ever seen the movie Bambi, feel free to put a Y or an N in the chat. If you've ever watched Bambi, you know that within the first scene of Bambi, the mom gets shot, right? It's absolutely terrifying. And you'll begin to notice that virtually every Disney hero or heroine does not have a mother figure. And why is that? Or they're orphans. They lost both mother and father. It is the most terrifying thing that can happen to a child. And I didn't realize that until I became the stepmom to two children after I married a widower, right? My two kids, they were 3 and 5, and they lost their mom. And so when I watched Bambi with them and I saw the look of horror on their faces when Bambi's mom got shot, it was an eye-opener for me. And I thought, wow, that Walt Disney knows exactly what he's doing. He had those kids in the palm of his hand because that adrenaline is surging to such a degree that all the viewer is waiting for is relief. Tell me it's going to be all better. And then Bambi meets Thumper, meets the other friends, frolics in the woods, and all the little children go, ah. A goodwill story when you are helping someone lights up the brain. And it changes us when we hear that story, but we never forget it because all of these brain chemicals are being released while we are hearing the story. And in fact, our brain can be convinced that the story is actually happening to us. That's how powerful story is. So when you tell a story of goodwill, when you make the intention to help another human, what happens to our brain and our bodies, frankly, is reduced stress-related activity, greater reward activity, caregiving. What does caregiving mean? When you post a Yelp review, you are telling a very ancient story that says, be careful about going into this restaurant, you could die, right? Bad review. Or this is the best place to pick an apple. There are no predators here. This is a great review. It's a very ancient mechanism to actually want to leave a customer review. Our job as innovators is to get other people to leave those incredible reviews about us, to get them to tell their stories. And more than anything, we know that user-generated stories are the most impactful. Among millennials, right, which is quickly becoming the largest group in the workplace. They are more influential on purchases. They are absolutely more trusted. Guess what? The messages that we generate from the home front are not as convincing as everybody else who talks about us. So it's more important than ever that the stories we tell incorporate the stories of our customers and that we absolutely positively make them the hero so that they will write fantastic stories about us and share great stories about us. And the more that we can really dwell on the human brain to do that, to give that receiving and giving mechanism and giving the listener the tools to do it, the better off our innovations will be, the faster the stories around our innovation will travel, and hopefully the adoption of that will travel as well. So you can't really have a talk around innovation without including Steve Jobs. And I think this story is so important. You know, the most powerful person in the world is a storyteller, he said. He asked his team, who's the most powerful person in the room? And they said, the engineer, the innovator, the creator, the maker. And he said, no, it's the storyteller, because they set the vision and the values and the agenda. So I'm also imploring you to become a great storyteller so that you can be the person who is setting the vision and the values and the agenda around your own innovation, around your respective businesses. So think about the stories that you could be telling in order to own that position as storyteller. I'm sure many of you have heard of Dollar Shave Club, right? This is and just give me a Y in the chat if you're familiar with Dollar Shave Club. Dollar Shave Club are the folks who said, why don't we send the razors directly to your house rather than going to the store to buy them? So Dollar Shave Club is a direct-to-consumer brand. You buy the razors online, you get set up a monthly subscription, and you get the razors delivered to your home. So I want to introduce you to Mike. Oops, sorry. And play this little video for you so you can get a sense of how Dollar Shave Club tells its stories. And again, we're not talking about $1 billion breakthrough here, right? We're talking about razors delivered to your home.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop-up. Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
All right. So what exactly, and you can just put the answer in the chat here, what exactly is Mike selling? What is he selling? Obviously, he's selling razors. We know that. Yeah, simplicity. What else is he selling? Convenience, time, right? A new paradigm, saving people time and money, affordability, job creation, right? Not having to think. Why do we want our customers to think when we just want them to buy, right? Health, transparency, all great. What if I could convince you that what Mike is actually selling is enlightenment? Would you believe me? Well, here's my argument. Dollar Shave Club is selling you enlightenment because that's what they refer to their customers as. Enlightened customer number 164. I save $100 a year on shaving now. Basically, I'm a genius. How many of you refer to your customers as enlightened, as geniuses, right? I mean, we've all gotten pretty accustomed to going to the genius bar. We have a level of expectation that's incredible, right? Right, maybe we should meditate on our razor, right? So I love it. Even the onboarding process at Dollar Shave Club is amazing. Are you ready to join the ranks of our enlightened membership? So suddenly a customer becomes a member. And again, all we're doing is buying razors, but we're members now of a club. And who wouldn't want to be part of a club that includes in its ranks a champion Mexican wrestler and an award-winning wood carver? Who doesn't want to be in that club? I love how they extend this branding, this story, all the way through into their packaging. Your face isn't an icy windshield. Don't scrape it. That humor, that feeling, those values and purpose continue throughout. And even when they do product development, when they're moving into the innovation space and doing something completely new, they do it differently. So these One Wipe Charlies, which we've all become so familiar with now, they would go to the Garlic Festival in California. They would go to Harley Davidson festivals, right? Motorcycle festivals like Sturgis and all over the country. And they would stand outside a porta potty and say, would you like a One Wipe Charlie? Would you like to give it a shot? Just come out and tell us what you felt about it when you got out. They went to see their customers where they lived, just like Bronislaw Malinowski told us to, right? Go directly into the field and see how people exist in their native environments to understand how to use a product. Today, we call this customer experience, as if it's a breakthrough mindset, right? But this is how we really begin to hear the stories of how people use our products and services and how innovation can really match that need. So Dollar Shave Club has a lot of storytellers, like this one. How about this unboxing experience, right? Dollar Shave Club, you rock my face. I feel like I finally have figured out what men do on the weekends when I'm not around. They set up dioramas of whole soldiers attacking these things. And again, no one's paying this, right? No one's paying anyone for this. Steve S. at least got a free t-shirt as a result of this one. But you'll notice that Dollar Shave Club has hundreds of thousands of people posting, right? Hundreds of thousands of people posting about just using their razors. And here's what we know about the impact of that. 2.3 million subscribers just 3 years after launch, and already at 51% of the market share just 3 years later. How much would it cost you to put up all of those videos yourself if this was your business? Getting other people to tell your story is critical. So ask yourself, have you given your customers, first, the ability to feel like a hero? And number two, the space to allow them to tell the world that they feel like a hero or that they have suddenly obtained enlightenment. They have seen the light. Now, this is pretty remarkable in its own right? Their biggest competitor was Gillette. But what's more impressive is what happened just 5 years after launch. They were purchased by Unilever for $1 billion. Razors in a box. Why? Why did Unilever want this brand so badly? Number one, they had never had a direct-to-consumer product before. Number two, they had never sold a razor brand before. They now had an opportunity to go head-to-head against Gillette, which was bought by Procter & Gamble. So now they had a new category competitor. And guess what Mike is doing now? Mike is finding ways to package other Unilever products, shampoo, soap, shaving cream, hair care, you name it, beard wax, even for people who decide they don't want to use the razors anymore, of packaging all of that up together and creating a whole new stream of business of direct-to-consumer branding that they never had before. So, and that is basically on that phenomenon of getting other people to tell your story for you. So these storytelling mechanisms, this is how you can watch them here, right? Shared history. We all shave. Even Pop hated paying too much for razors. Our prophet Mike, he's funny. He has a just like me quality. It's just another one of the guys. Our values here, right? We're in a smart people's club. We're in a club of the enlightened. It's funny, there's great value, it's easy, and it's smart. My customers are smart, and I get to tell them that on a regular basis. Their message, shave time, shave money. And lastly, for early adopters, you are welcome here. You are welcome here alongside champion wrestlers. So this is a reminder to all of us from Bill Gates, is that are you giving people the tools to go and do miraculous things with the products and services that you've created, the innovation that you've created? Are you creating the communications mechanisms like a YouTube channel, social media channels that simply allow your customers to communicate with you about how they're using it and maybe in ways you've never even thought of? Who would have thought anyone would set up a diorama of toy army soldiers fighting one another for the first dibs on their Dollar Shave Club package? So a couple of ideas of how you can get started doing this as amazing storytellers. So if you're a National Geographic traveler, you're probably one of the most trusted names in travel, right? And you will want to be, as a brand, the company that points out the very best place to hear folk music, Irish folk music in Dublin. Perfect. Right on brand for National Geographic traveler. Or if you're Condé Nast traveler, maybe you want to seek out a food expert in Venice who can point the way to the very best pastry shop in the whole town. You can use an expert to create a following between you and your readers or fans. Not only that, you can also use your own customers in contest form, we call that open innovation, to tell us a little bit about what does springtime in Paris look like to you. Now, springtime in Paris for me might be a daffodil outside of the Eiffel Tower, but when you see it characterized this way with beautiful fragrant flowers and those delicious macarons and the high-end luxury jewelry, CN Traveler says, tell us what you want to see, express yourself back to us. Don't think that this doesn't give editors more ideas on how to think about Paris in a completely different way for their coverage in the future, and maybe even enlisting some of these folks as influencers or writers. And lastly, just setting up a page like The Guardian did to say, upload your favorite travel snaps here. Right, so this is maybe just one person who moderates the channel for any kind of lewd uploads here, but otherwise this is a beautiful, perfect sunrise in Guatemala, in Antigua rather. I've been to this lovely village, and this is exactly what morning looks like before you decide to climb that really tough volcano. So I want you to think about this. How are you going to allow people to tell stories inside the company and without, and outside the company? How will you get them to do it? So I want to give you a couple of ideas to start doing this, and you can take this with you. Now, in the world of storytelling, we operate on something called story spines. And so the first question you're going to ask is, what's my story? And the second question you want to ask is, who's the hero of the story? So can I just have a Y or an N? How many of you are Star Wars fans out there? I'm just curious if this example is going to be relevant to you. Just give me a yes. So one thing you want to get really clear about when you're telling an innovation story is that the hero of the story is always a human, right? The hero of the story is always a human. That's how you attach emotion, anger, pain, frustration, joy, breakthrough, triumph, whatever it may be. The hero of the story is always human, not your innovation, not the product or service. So remember, Luke Skywalker is the hero of our story, not the lightsaber. The lightsaber just allows Luke Skywalker to triumph. And if so, you are introducing a product or service, make sure that the customer is the hero. The user is the hero. The reseller, the partner is the hero, not your tool. You are creating heroes with your products or services. So think about that. And the question you really want to ask yourself is, how is my product or service making someone's life better now that I'm in it? Now that that product or service is in it? How is their life better? How has that person become the hero? And I encourage all of you to ask your customers, tell me what's happened since you signed your contract with me, since you started working with us, since you started using our product or service. Tell me how your life has gotten better. Tell me how life has changed. It may initially sound like we save time, we save money, we get more productive. That's a baseline for everyone in a story. What you want to hear is, what did I do with the money? What did the customer do with all that time? When they became more effective, more productive, what did it look like? Did you get to go home at 5 o'clock? Did you not have to work all weekend? Did you get to go to your kid's soccer game? That's life, right? So maybe they became a hero at home, not just in the office. Find all the ways, all the kinds of emotion that it generates when your customer becomes the hero, and capture those. You want to hold on to those because you're going to need them for the story spine. So I want to take you through, to this thing. This is called the story spine. And you've seen it 1,000 times before, right? Once upon a time, every day, but then one day, and because of that, and that, until finally, and ever since then, right? We're all very familiar with this once upon a time story. But this framework, this innovation story framework, starts off with, once upon a time, we all had to go to the library when we needed information. And every day, we would go to the library, we would consult big books, we would flip through them, we would find the information that we needed. Most of the time, we weren't even able to take those books out of the library, the most important ones. We would have to search giant databases to find the information that we needed. But then one day, someone invented Google. And because of that, we didn't have to put on pants to go to the library anymore. We could sit at home in our homes and we could get information instantly. And because of that, I could build a business. And because of that, I could connect with customers all over the world. And because of that, I could finally dream bigger than a business that would tie me endlessly to business books and reference materials and things that I could now access from home and that all of my employees could access as well. Until finally, I launched a business that would effectively trade on the New York Stock Exchange. And ever since then, my business has never been the same. It's grown globally. I get to have a fantastic life. And the moral of the story is information should never be tethered to just one place. Freedom of information allows us freedom everywhere. Right? Here's a basic story framework, right? But if you start applying this, right, what was everything like, right? Think about the prophets. What was everything like before the shift? What are the values that we rallied around? Maybe it was hard work. And then one day the innovation came. But the innovation is not the hero. The innovation is the transformation that takes place for me. So I'm happy to send you, just text that same number, iStory, and I'll put it up again for you, to use a story spine like this next time you're in a meeting. Just say, I want to tell you a story. And you don't have to use the words once upon a time, right? People will start looking at their watch, maybe if they do that. Do you remember, men, just 5 years ago? In fact, before we had the most recent upgrade, life looked like this. And every day we functioned like this until one day, right? We started using Salesforce rather than using our ACT database, right? And then it shifted. But think about, in your own work and even the innovations that you're working on, how can we tell a story that takes us from our history, we incorporate our values and our purpose, we move into thinking about who our hero is, our customer, what the pain was like for them before, and how things have shifted. And then the moral of the story is, right, it's that we can never go back to doing it the old way ever again. Paint a picture of the future that all of us want to be a part of, because that's how the story really spreads. Allow me to internalize that new emotion of hope of what will change when my innovation is adopted everywhere. So I want to open it up, and I'm happy to share the 5 essential tools of storytelling as well as the story spine with you. If you'd like, please feel free to connect with me via text, or I'll put up my, yeah, there you go. I will put up my email here if you need it as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. That's the number, right? Yes, someone had asked about that number, and someone else asked what to do if they're not in the US. Is there a different?
Yeah, you can email me. I'm happy to send it to you as an attachment.
Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing all your wisdom with us. I hope we'll see you again at WeWork Labs sometime in the future.
I cannot wait.
For your time. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Susan, any final words? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I can be of help in any way, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm leaving storytelling tips there all the time. I would love to be of service to you. Don't hesitate to reach out. Here to help.
Amazing. Oh yeah, well, also you were highly recommended by our last speaker, Rob Napoli, who you know. Yeah. So yes.
Another great storyteller. Perfect.
Great recommendations. We are now entering our final module of Leadership Academy, which is going to be all about leading and managing teams. So we have 4 more weeks of sessions to go. 8 amazing speakers and sessions are on the calendar. I just dropped the link to our Leadership Academy page, but active participants, of course, will also find all the information on our Slack channel and in the WeWork Labs member portal. Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.